My name is Oscar. I'm in charge of partnerships here at engageSPARK. And today we are here with our CEO, Afner Mizrahi. Afner, how are you today? How's it going?
Good to see you.
So it's so good to have you all here. And the purpose of this webinar is really simple. We wanted to show you what engageSPARK is all about and tell you what is it exactly what differentiates us. Why is it that you should be thinking about using our platform? Some of the case studies that you could have in mind and show you how the tools work. So without further ado, Afner, please do what you do best and show us what engageSPARK is capable of.
Sure. Thank you, Oscar. Why don't I go ahead and share my screen? And hopefully you can all see my PowerPoint. So I'm going to jump in, and also as Oscar noted, he already kind of laid out the agenda, but I will lay it out as well. Before I do that, just want to remind everybody who didn't already scan the QR code and register to get to join the live demo by getting SMS and calls and WhatsApp surveys and so on, to please scan this QR code, and you'll be able to register directly for the demo itself. So quick agenda overview. I'm going to tell you all about engageSPARK, a little background, then we'll talk about a few case studies. I'll talk a little bit about generative AI and what engageSPARK is doing with it. And then I'll do a brief demo of the engageSPARK platform. And then, of course, happy to answer any questions you all have. So why don't I go ahead and dive in, just to point out as a preliminary thing, which many of you probably know, there's still an enormous portion of the global population that is still not online. They either only have access to the internet very rarely, or do not and have never had access to the internet before. And so being able to reach this audience is actually very challenging for organizations, for international development organizations, for academic researchers, because you can't do it online, or it can be very costly if you send enumerators out into the field to survey them or to disseminate information to them. And so this is where engageSPARK comes in. We make it very easy for organizations to send important information to hard-to-reach populations who are not on the internet, but do have an old-school mobile phone, a basic non-internet connected phone, a non-smartphone, one of those old Nokia phones that you've seen. And we make it possible via offering a platform that makes it very easy to create and launch SMS surveys, IVR, which stands for interactive voice response. It means automated phone call or robocall surveys, and WhatsApp surveys. We are a social enterprise. We're focused on low and middle income countries. So a lot of our features are built into the platform, were built with low and middle income countries in mind, and the special challenges that exist in those places. And if it helps kind of understand, although you'll get a better feel when we do the demo, you can think of us as kind of like SurveyMonkey or Qualtrics or even Google Forms. But instead of sending somebody a survey via the web, you are surveying or collecting data from people who are not online. And so again, we have a platform. It's focused on being very easy to use for any non-techie can go onto our platform and create all sorts of campaigns. And behind the scenes, we're not just a software platform, but on top of that, we have built connections and relationships with telcos across the world. So we're a one-stop shop. You can come to our platform and create a campaign, upload your contacts that you want to survey, that you want to send critical information to, push a button, and then our system just makes the calls, sends the SMSs, sends the WhatsApp surveys, etc. You don't have to go and talk to mobile operators or anything like that. It's all built in end-to-end platform in that regard. To give you an idea, we, as a social enterprise, we mainly work with international development organizations, UN agencies, and universities doing academic research. They've used us in more than 185 countries since we started. So I'll talk now about a few case studies to give you a feel for how organizations use our platform. But before I do that, don't forget to register for the live demo. It really will be fun, and we will delete your personal information after the demo. So not to worry. Please go ahead and scan that to try out the demo. Okay, so let's start off by talking about IOM, the UN Migration Organization. It stands for International Organization for Migration. A few years ago, when COVID hit, the government of Bangladesh decided to shut down access to the refugee camps in Bangladesh, in Cox's Bazar, so that no aid workers could actually get into the refugee camps because they didn't want COVID to spread, of course. And so these refugee camps had hundreds of thousands, almost 1 million Rohingya refugees from Myanmar living in these camps. And IOM wanted to send out critical information about COVID to these refugees. And the problem was, one, the Rohingya are an illiterate population. They don't have a written language. And two, IOM only had about 7,000 phone numbers of the Rohingya refugees. And so, but they really wanted to get the word out, the information that you and I, that we all learned from the internet, from TV, from radio, from newspapers, that we all learned about COVID, about quarantining and testing and all of that stuff towards the beginning of COVID. They had no way of getting that information. And so what IOM did was they used our platform. They created what's called a drip campaign on our platform, which I'll show you in a few minutes. And they created basically a series of messages that go out over time. And they pre-recorded these messages in the Rohingya's language. They were about 2 to 3 minutes long, each one. And the refugees, they would basically get a phone call, they would answer, they would hear the message in their local language. And then a couple days later, they would get another call, and a couple days later, another call, and so on. And so they were able to build this on our platform in, I don't know, 30 minutes or so, and go live. And part of what they did to kind of grow their database, to grow the participants, to get the word out about the information in their messages to more and more people, was that they, on every call, they said, please show your phone to your friends and family and tell them to miscall the phone number that is showing on your phone that you receive these calls from. So that way, other people would be able to make a call to that number that the refugee received the call from. Our system would capture the caller's phone number and then reject the call, so there was no cost to them, and then call them right back and basically register them into the program, see if they had any questions, ask a few questions. And this is all automated, of course. And then they would be enrolled in the program, and they would get the first message in the drip campaign, and then a couple days later the second one, and so on. So it was kind of a rolling campaign where people could join at any point in time, start from the beginning, and keep getting the messages. And so it was a really powerful campaign. Ended up reaching, more than 30,000 Rohingya refugees, or families, I should say, which ultimately translated into about 150,000 people. So it's a pretty powerful campaign. IOM is a big partner of ours. They use us across the world for a variety of different use cases, including sending emergency notifications and surveys to Ukrainian refugees right now during the war, as well as using us for their internal operations across almost every country in the world to communicate with their staff and send critical emergency notifications. All right, so I'll talk about another use case quickly, similar to the previous one, but of course also different. So the World Food Program and PCI Media had a program called Cash for Prevention to try to fight child malnutrition in Somalia. And the World Food Program and PCI Media, they had a radio program where they played different short messages, 2 to 3 minutes long, about child malnutrition and different tips for ensuring that your child during their first 1,000 days of life have, are exposed to good nutritional practices and so on. And they played these messages on the radio, but they also wanted to target 16,000 families whose phone numbers they had who were in the program with these messages to make sure that they listened to them. And so again, they created a drip campaign on our platform, uploading these different messages, setting a delay between each one. So the first message would go out, people would get that call, and then a couple days later, the next one, and so on. And these messages, the purpose was social behavior change, to get people to change their behavior so that they were focusing more on their child's nutrition. And then at the end of this program, they actually pushed out an 11-question IVR survey. So people would receive a call, and they would be asked a question. Press 1 if you're female, press 2 if you're male, and so on and so forth, to understand better how the participants were using the cash that was transferred to them, and also to test how well they comprehended the lessons from those social behavior change calls that had come the previous weeks. And so they actually had some very strong results. More than half of the participants actually listened to 100% of the informational calls, and then 30% of the participants completed the IVR survey, which is quite high for a survey, and almost 45% actually answered at least 5 questions. And what's actually kind of amazing about this program is that the participants did not know these calls were coming. So it's not like they were informed in advance that they were going to be receiving these calls. They didn't recognize the phone number that the calls came from, but they still engaged at a very high level. I'll talk about one more client, Johns Hopkins University, which uses us across the world in a variety of different use cases. But one of the bigger ones is that in Colombia, Uganda, and Bangladesh, Johns Hopkins uses us to do public health research. And their goal is to basically understand what is the most cost-effective method to get accurate public health data from a random sampling that is statistically significant of the countrywide population. And so they actually use our platform to run a number of different experiments around, for example, if we send an airtime top-up, a mobile credit top-up in advance of sending the person the survey, will that increase response rates? If you don't send a mobile top-up, is that enough? If you, if you ask people what time they want to receive a call, if you send them an SMS before a call. So they've run a number of different experiments. And as part of this, they've actually pushed out calls and texts to millions of citizens in these countries. And their survey is actually quite long. It's depending on which survey, it can range from about 30 to 45 questions. And of course, at the end of the survey, the participant always gets, or almost always gets, a airtime top-up, a mobile credit incentive, or thank you for taking the survey. And they've done this again in 3 countries at a very large scale, and then separately have been using us in DR Congo, Mozambique, and also Bangladesh for other research projects that they've been running. So now I'll quickly talk about generative AI and how we'll be incorporating it, and actually have already started incorporating it into our platform, and I will actually show that to you shortly. But we kind of focusing on 2 more high-level areas, 2 types of issues. The first is niche issues, but that are very important when it comes to data collection. And so one is real-type interpretation of messy response data. So what does that mean? When you send somebody a survey, and you ask them a question like, what is your, highest level of education? And you give them, let's say, a few options, like, reply 1 for for primary school, or 1 for no school, 2 for primary school, and so on. And they reply, yes, I have already finished primary school and secondary school. I am now in university. So a human can understand that that person has, their highest level of education at this point, I guess, is secondary school, and they're currently in university. But an automated system can't really figure out which is the right answer. But AI, generative AI, actually can. It can understand if we basically tell it, here's the question, here are the responses we were looking for, here is the answer we received. It can then point to the correct answer. And the power of that is then that answer can actually be used in real time, for example, for follow-up questions. So if you had a different follow-up question for somebody who has not had any education versus somebody who has a university degree, but the response you get is messy, you can, the follow-up questions can still be asked because the AI can in real time tell us what the correct answer is, and then again the system will then ask the correct follow-up question, just as if the person had answered with a clean 1 or 2, if those were the options for the different answer choices. Another area is categorization or sentiment analysis. So imagine you have an open-ended question where you ask somebody to tell you how they're feeling today, and they write a paragraph in response, or even if it's spoken response, they speak on an automated phone call, on an IVR survey, they speak a response. Imagine if you can specify 5 or 10 or whatever categories that you expect the response to fall under, like happy, sad, stressed, angry, whatever. And then the AI can actually, you tell the AI, these are the categories we're looking for, which one does it fall under? And the AI, or it could of course be none, but the AI could then identify it. And then again, you can use that category for skip logic, for to determine, have our system automatically determine what is the next question to ask based on that categorization. So the first one is actually already in our platform, and I'll show it to you shortly. The second one is coming very soon, and by very soon, I mean within the next few weeks. The last one is a little bit more complicated, but also very powerful. So imagine you are doing a needs assessment survey, and you need to find out where somebody lives. And it's an illiterate population that you're seeking to reach, or may have many people illiterate, so you have to do it via voice calls, via IVR. And so you push out a call, but the problem is there are 70 provinces in the country that you're targeting. So you can't really ask people, press 1 for this province, 2 for that one, and so on, because obviously they're not going to sit there and listen to 70 options. And it'll probably cost you a lot of money because the call will be very long. But what you can do is ask them, what province do you live in? And they speak a response. And of course, the problem is similar to the first issue with messy response data. You're often not going to get clean answers. Someone's not going to say New York, or something similar than that. I mean, a lot of people will, but a lot of people will give longer, messier, more complicated responses. And that's where AI can be really powerful, where you can basically say to AI, hey, I am looking for a province in this country. This is the response I received. Which province is it? And the AI can tell you. Or if you ask for somebody's occupation, and there can be so many different occupations. So we're talking about data sets that are quite large, that are hard to really provide to the user or to the respondent as answer choices. But then you can have generative AI, if it understands what we are looking for, to be able to provide what the user actually responded with very quickly. And then again, use that response for follow-up questions. So these are some very niche things, but very powerful for improving data collection significantly, leveraging the power of generative AI to improve surveys and data collection. I'll very briefly just talk about chatbots. One of the things we're also working on is the idea that chatbots right now are not very accessible via SMS in low and middle income countries, or voice, especially in languages that are less common, or WhatsApp. And one of the things we're working on is figuring out how to restrict a bot to a very particular knowledge base so that people can have conversations in LMICs over the channels that they have access to with that bot to get information. So, for example, a farmer in DR Congo, who speaks Swahili and only has a basic phone, being able to just send in a text message to get information, get help, get tips, has a problem, it asks for help about that problem via SMS, or calls in and does that, and immediately gets a response in their local language that is helpful, but restricted to, let's say, a knowledge base. The information that the bot uses cannot go beyond a knowledge base that your organization, for example, provides to train it. So that's those are some of the things we're working on or have already built into the platform on AI. And now I will actually move to the platform and show you a quick demo. So here is the engageSPARK platform. I'm just going to grab a little water. And and basically there are two key pages to the engageSPARK platform, or two key parts of it. The campaigns page, which is where you'll be creating and managing the different campaigns that you launch, and the contacts page, where you will be managing your contacts. And the contacts page is just like a table, like almost like Excel. You have a bunch of columns. You can add as many columns as you want. You can see we have a phone number field, which is currently hidden because we're doing a demo and there are real people's phone numbers in here. And the last name field is also hidden as well. And so yeah, you can add whatever data you want in here. You can upload contacts. You just click on this button, you upload a file, and the system walks you through uploading those contacts. You can add contacts manually. You can add a group. You can also add a segment. A segment is a group based on rules. So, for example, a rule might be, well, this is, sorry, a bad example, but a rule might be, you want to put everybody in a group whose gender equals female, and location and age is greater than 18, or greater than and equal to 18. And so women 18 and older. And then anybody who meets those two rules will automatically be added to this segment. If a woman then later, for example, well, I don't know, maybe it's a bad example. Maybe we should say younger than 25. But if a woman then becomes older than 25 and you change her age in the platform, then she would automatically, for example, be removed from the segment. And the purpose of segments, just like groups, is to be able to target different audiences for different campaigns. And so now I'll just jump into, there's a lot of power you can do on the contacts page, but those are some of the things that are pretty useful. I'll jump into the campaigns page. So here you would go ahead and click on the new campaign button, pick the type of campaign that you want to create, an IVR survey. I talked about a drip campaign, WhatsApp survey, SMS survey, it's an airtime top up to a bunch of people at once, and so on. But instead of going in and kind of creating one from scratch, which is very fast, just to save time, I've already created a couple of campaigns to show you. So I have this IVR survey, and just to show you how it works, you can always, of course, I'll just add in a question here quickly to show you. You can always, when creating a question, right, it's a survey. So you have a series of questions in here. And whenever creating a question, you can upload the audio file. You can actually click here to record directly on the platform your question, or you can do text to speech. And for this demo, I've used text to speech. And so here we have a little intro question that will be played. So when somebody answers, they'll actually hear this question, or this message, this introductory message. Then they'll hear this question, which is basically asking them what's the biggest problem that they're facing right now. And then we have 4 options. And then down here, you'll see we have our 4 options: 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you can add as many choices as you want. You can then also give labels to each choice. So in the report that you'll get, you'll actually see food, for example, instead of 1. And then depending on the responses, you can have all sorts of actions happen. So we have a lot of actions. You can like play a message back if they press 1. You can update the contacts profile. So let's say you had a column on the contacts page called like, issue or problem. You can update it with the word food in there. So now you have it stored in that contact's profile that they need food. You can do skip logic. You could jump to a later question in the survey. You could subscribe them to another campaign that gives them information on how to get access to food, send them an airtime top up, and so on and so forth. You can transfer the call to somebody else so they could speak to a human. A lot of different things you can do. But I'll just move on because I don't want to spend too much time on all of this. But you then, of course, important things, right? People might not answer as you expect. They might press 5 or 0. So you can have an invalid key press step where you play an error message and then you can, let's say, replay the question. Or if they time out, they don't press a key after 10 seconds, you play an error message and then replay the question. And then I'll just show you here. I have another question here, which is pretty fun. It's asking you to speak an answer to this question. Of course, it's in line with the rest of the survey, which is a needs assessment survey trying to understand what is your greatest need right now during this emergency. So it's asking you to describe the biggest problem in your own words, but speak in your native language. So if you speak some language other than English, please, when you answer this question, when you get this call during the demo, please go ahead and answer in that language. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on transcribe. And so what that means is our system will then automatically transcribe your message in practically whatever language you speak in. So here we have our IVR survey. There's a lot of other features. I'm just going to mention a few very quickly. We have reconnect call. The whole idea here is if your call drops in the middle, the system can call the person right back and continue where they left off. So if you have a 10-question survey and the call drops after question 4, because let's say there's a bad phone signal or something, our system can call them right back and start over at question 5 and continue, at question 5. So they just go right back into the survey. And from your perspective, when looking at the report of the survey, you just see basically one response with all the answers to the survey. We also have retry calls. People may not pick up the call. Their battery's dead. They have a bad phone signal, whatever it is. You can add a number of retry calls to try calling the person back, the next day, at the same time as the initial call or a specific time of day, 9 a.m., et cetera, et cetera. And if they don't pick up, we try them again. This is critical to increasing engagement rates. There are some other features. I'm going to skip over them and just go ahead and launch this campaign. So now this IVR survey campaign is live. I'm now going to go into my other demo here, this other survey, which is a drip campaign, which I spoke about during the presentation earlier, which was used by IOM and by World Food Program and PCI Media for disseminating information. We're going to use it a little bit differently. We're going to use it to basically initiate and inform people, the participants, that they are getting a call. So give them a heads up. So you'll see I labeled it SMS notification of call, and this is an SMS message and it has personalization. So it'll include your first name and just telling you, we'll be calling you shortly with a survey, please pick up. And I should probably add here so you don't get confused, engageSPARK demo. And so you'll notice this message goes out immediately. Then the next message actually goes out 10 seconds later, but it's not a message. I chose from here, this content type, an actions only step. and then used a subscribe contact to campaign action. So what's happening here is you are getting this SMS message to tell you the call's coming, and then 10 seconds later, and in a real world situation, we would recommend that you make that longer, but then 10 seconds later, you're being subscribed to the IVR survey that we just created. So you'll get the SMS, and then you'll immediately, 10 seconds later, get the call from the IVR survey. And then here I have a WhatsApp question with generative AI built in, the first item on that list that we talked about. So basically, it's asking you how you got to work today, but asking you to reply with a full sentence, not just saying car. And reply in a different language if you speak another language. And so the idea here is that whatever you respond to the AI should be able to understand which of the possible choices you are actually replying to, like I walked, I work from home, I don't have a job, which we're not actually specifying in the survey. We're just asking you to answer open-ended, but the AI will figure out which of these is the correct option and then let you know what you chose. So that's pretty cool. Well, then, and that'll go out a minute later. Then a minute after that, you'll get subscribed to another WhatsApp demo that we have, where you'll be able to see more of the features that exist in a WhatsApp survey. And then you will get a goodbye SMS 1 hour later. And that's it. We then will go ahead and launch this. And then it's very simple to subscribe contacts to the campaign. We just click on the actions button next to this drip campaign we created. We click manage subscriptions, and we go to the segment, and we can just subscribe the segment of people, which I won't do right now. I'll subscribe everybody after this webinar to get the calls and get the SMS and so on. And for now, I will subscribe myself so that we can all listen to it and experience it and see it on my phone. So I'm going to subscribe Avner, and I think I have my phone here handy. Okay, and yes, so I just got an SMS. It says, "Hi, Avner, we'll be calling you shortly with the survey. Please pick up IOM engageSPARK demo." And as soon as my phone rings, I will put it on speaker and we can all listen. I don't know if you can see. Oh, and now my phone is ringing.
Hi, this is IOM calling. We are an NGO that helps people struggling during emergencies. We know times are very difficult right now. We're trying to understand what problems you are facing so that we can help. What is the biggest problem you are facing right now? If it's food, press the number 1 button on your phone. If it's shelter, press the number 2 button. If it's medicine, press the number 3. For something else, press 4.
I'll press 3 for medicine. Now going to the next.
When you are done speaking.
I'll say something in French, even though my French is not very good. I'll just say, "Je suis désolé, je ne parle pas français très bien." So there's our IVR survey. That was a real live call, and you'll be getting that call shortly.
We have a couple of questions. Would it be all right if we also take care of those, or do you think we
Sure.
have time?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Fantastic. So one thing is that there are a lot of spammers in different countries. Will people pick up if they don't recognize the number?
It's a great question. So from our experience, people receiving calls obviously in Western countries, in the US, right? They hate receiving robocalls. They think of them as spam. They don't pick up calls when they don't recognize the phone number. But from our experience, and we have lots of different use cases to back this up, and I have a slide somewhere that I could pull up, or we could share when posting this webinar, showing response rates across LMICs. from campaigns where the people were not expecting the call and did not recognize the phone number that the calls were coming from. And so in developing countries, in LMICs, people are not saturated with spam calls the way they are in much of the West. And so receiving a phone call can often be an exciting thing, and people do pick up their phones. And we've seen pickup rates and engagement rates, as high as 80% in some cases where people don't even know the call is coming and don't recognize the phone number that the call is coming from. We've seen a wide range, but it's pickup rates are, unless you're doing pickup rates, I mean, typically end up being in the anywhere from like 25-30% all the way up to 80% we've seen. So people do pick up their phones. Sorry, go ahead with the next question.
Terrific. Thank you for that. Second question. It's a good one, I think. Will this platform work for different kinds of projects, like a church sending out weekly messages to their community? Do you work with other type of organizations?
Yeah, we don't have a problem with that. Again, we are a social enterprise. Most of our customers, a large majority, are doing social impact related work, and we would consider religious organizations as also falling under that. And we do have some that use our platform for those purposes. Obviously, there are certain use cases that we do not support, like marketing gambling or marketing tobacco or things like that. And we have an anti-spam policy and a fair use policy that describes what kind of campaigns we're not willing to support, but otherwise, for the most part, we're willing to support most projects.
Perfect, thank you. Next question. This is a good one. I've heard about Viamo before. Do you know them, and how are you different from them?
Sure. I mean, Viamo is a great organization. We kind of think of them as maybe a partner in this space, for lack of a better term. But they do things in a different way than we do. They really focus on kind of consulting. They're really a consulting organization that helps you from A to Z, design your project, translate your messaging into a local language, having it recorded, and then they build everything for you and set it up and launch it, and then you can get regular reporting on how things are going. Whereas with us, you really we're a software solution. We're offering you a platform to use that you can create different kinds of campaigns yourself, monitor them, tweak them in real time. Let's say like you created a whole program and you had some messages in there, and then you realized there was a problem with one of those messages. With our platform, it takes 2 seconds to go onto the platform, replace the audio file, and you're done. You don't need to talk to anybody. You don't need to do anything. You kind of control everything yourself. Additionally, one of the other kind of big differences between us and Viamo is that while Viamo does do some kind of outbound communications, their main focus is on their 321 service, from our understanding, where they're basically setting up different kinds of services and hotlines for individuals in LMICs, of course, to get information. So to call into a hotline, go through a menu to get different kinds of information, to learn different things, and so on and so forth. They're kind of connecting people to services. And we think of it kind of slightly differently. We are connecting organizations to people. So while we, of course, can set up hotlines and things like that, it's not the core of what most organizations use us for. Most really use us to disseminate information or to push out surveys. So it's more outbound, and it could be triggered by outbound and then have a two-way component, rather than very inbound, where the end user is calling in to get information. So it's kind of two different ways of looking at things. And of course, again, we're a self-service platform where you're using our system yourselves, with, of course, support. We provide a lot of excellent support, versus they're more of a consulting agency that will really do everything for you and help you from the design stand to the end of the survey analysis and everything. And it ultimately depends on what you're looking for. If you want a very hands-off approach where you just say, I want to do this project and let them run with it, that's great. That's not what we do. If you want a much more hands-on approach where you have your content, you have it translated, you have it recorded, or can get it recorded by members of your team or whomever, and you have your audience and so on and so forth, well, and you want to control it and you want to create your campaigns and monitor them and tweak them, then we're probably a better fit.
Terrific. We want to be super respectful of everyone's time. So I think it's time to wrap up. If you have any follow-up questions, we're going to be posting these on LinkedIn and different social media. So please feel free to follow up and ask more questions as well. Apologies to those who were not able to get their answers yet. We will respond to everyone. But yeah, thank you very much for your time. Avner, thank you for the explanation, for the presentation.
Of course. Thanks, Oscar. Take care.
Have a good one, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.